right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're cracking open the fascinating world of laptop hardware, getting into upgrades, repairs, and really understanding the tech that makes these machines tick.
Absolutely. We're going way beyond the basics today. So, whether you're trying to squeeze out some extra performance from your current laptop or you're just curious about what's going on under the hood, we've got you covered.
Love it. So let's dive right in. And what better place to start than with the heart of any portable device, the battery?
It's the lifeblood, no question. And yeah, it's true that battery degradation is a fact of life, but you know what? Replacing it is often way easier than people think. Forget about those pricey trips to the repair shop.
Music to my ears. So spill the beans. What's the secret? What do we need to know to tackle this ourselves?
All right, first things first, safety always comes first. Make absolutely sure your laptop is completely powered down and unplugged before you even think about going near that battery.
Gotcha. Safety first.
Then you want to take a look at the back panel. Usually there's a release latch or a few screws, and that'll give you access to the battery compartment. It really depends on the model you have, though.
Okay, so nothing too crazy, no specialized toolkit needed.
Nope, a standard screwdriver should do the trick for most laptops. Once you've got that back panel off, you'll see the battery itself. Usually there's a small connector, just disconnect it gently, and then you can slot in the new one, just like that. Just make sure it clicks into place nice and securely.
Got it. So it sounds pretty straightforward. I imagine there are probably some little nuances depending on the specific laptop model, so doing a little research beforehand is probably a good idea, huh?
Oh, absolutely. A quick search online for your specific model and battery replacement, and you'll usually find some super helpful guides or even videos to walk you through it step by step.
Perfect. Speaking of feeling empowered to fix things ourselves, let's talk about those dreaded keyboard calamities. We've all been there, right? Spilled coffee, crumbs finding their way into the keys. That one key that just decides to stop working for no apparent reason.
Oh, it's the worst. But here's the good news. You might not actually need to replace the whole keyboard. Replacing individual keys is often possible, and it's honestly surprisingly straightforward.
Really? That's awesome. I always assumed a busted key meant a full keyboard replacement, which can be a pain.
Not at all. If it's just one key acting up, try gently prying it off with your fingernail or like a thin tool. You'll see a little mechanism underneath. If it's just the keycap itself, you can just snap a new one on super easily.
Mm.
Even if that little mechanism underneath is broken, you can find replacement keycaps that come with a new mechanism included. Just pop the old one out and snap the new one in.
So satisfying. It's like a tiny little engineering puzzle. Okay, so we've covered some physical repairs. Now let's talk about a component that's absolutely crucial for performance, RAM.
Ah, yes, RAM. And just to be clear, we're not talking about the animal here.
Definitely not. But seriously, for those who might not be super familiar, can you break down exactly what RAM is and why it matters so much for our laptops?
Absolutely. RAM stands for Random Access Memory, and it's essentially your laptop's short-term memory. Think of it this way. The more RAM you have, the more tasks your laptop can juggle at the same time without slowing down to a crawl.
So if I'm the type who has like 20 tabs open while editing photos and streaming music, I probably want to think about maxing out my RAM, right?
Exactly. Upgrading your RAM can make a world of difference, especially if you're a multitasker or you're doing anything demanding on your laptop, like video editing or gaming. For everyday tasks like browsing the web and checking emails, 8 GB is usually plenty. But if you're doing more demanding stuff, you'll want to consider 16 GB or even 32 GB.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the big question, how difficult is it to actually upgrade the RAM in a laptop? Is this something we can attempt ourselves?
Honestly, it's more approachable than you might think. Just like with a battery, you want to start by completely powering down your laptop and unplugging it. The next step is to find those RAM slots, which usually involves taking off the back panel.
Okay, so far so good.
Now, some laptops might make you remove the keyboard to get to the RAM slots, which is a bit more involved, but still totally doable.
So once we've located the RAM slots, what's next?
You'll see the RAM modules themselves. They look like little circuit boards. To remove one, just gently push down on the clips at either end of the slot, and it should pop right up. Installing a new module is just as easy. You just line it up with the slot, angle it in, and gently push down until it clicks into place.
Sounds pretty straightforward. Any precautions we should keep in mind?
Good point, yes.
Yeah.
While accessing the RAM slots is generally pretty easy, you really want to be super careful when you're actually handling the modules themselves. Static electricity is a real danger here.
Yeah, those static shocks we've all experienced can be a real pain.
Exactly. RAM modules are super sensitive to static discharge. Ground yourself before you even touch them. Either touch a metal part of your computer case or use an anti-static wrist strap if you want to be extra careful. And be gentle when you're putting those new modules in. Too much force can actually damage the slot.
It's all about taking your time and being cautious. All right, let's shift gears and talk about something for those of us who really crave speed. Let's talk storage, specifically the age-old battle of HDD versus SSD.
Ah, now we're getting to the good stuff. This is where things get really exciting. So you've got your traditional hard disk drives, or HDDs, which have been around forever. They store data on spinning platters, kind of like old school record players.
And I'm guessing that's where that classic spinning hard drive noise comes from that I'm so used to hearing.
You got it. Now, on the flip side, you've got your solid-state drives, or
Mhm.
SSDs. These guys store data on flash memory chips. Think of it like having a super fast USB drive permanently installed in your laptop.
So the key difference here is speed, right?
Absolutely. SSDs completely blow HDDs out of the water when it comes to speed. Booting up your laptop, launching applications, loading files, everything just feels so much snappier with an SSD.
I'm starting to think my laptop is seriously stuck in the slow lane. Okay, let's say we decide to make the switch from an HDD to an SSD. What does that process actually look like?
It's one of the best upgrades you can do, and honestly, it's not as scary as it might sound. There are two main steps: migrating your data and then physically replacing the drive itself.
Okay, let's break that down. First up, migrating data. What does that involve?
So essentially, it means moving your entire digital life, your operating system, all your applications, files, everything from that old HDD to the new SSD. There are a few different ways to do this, but a common and really reliable method is using what's called cloning software.
Cloning software. Okay, now that sounds pretty high tech.
I know it sounds fancy, but it's more user-friendly than you might think, I promise. Basically, you connect your new SSD to your laptop while the old HDD is still installed. Some laptops have an extra slot specifically for this, but if not, you can use an external adapter. Once that's connected, you run the cloning software, and it basically creates an exact replica of your old HDD on the new SSD.
So once that cloning process is done, we can move on to the physical swap,
You
right?
got it. And the process is really similar to what we talked about earlier. Power down the laptop, unplug it, and access the drive bay. Usually it's under a panel on the back, but sometimes it might be under the keyboard. Disconnect the old HDD, usually involves unscrewing a few screws and detaching a connector, and then just install the new SSD in its place. Reconnect everything, screw it back in, and boom, you're good to go.
And with that, I imagine my laptop will be booting up in like 5 seconds flat.
It's a night and day difference. You'll be amazed. It really is. You'll wonder how you ever lived without it. But speaking of speed, let's not forget about the component that actually connects us to that digital world, the wireless card.
Right. Because what good is a lightning fast SSD if we're stuck waiting for pages to load because of a weak Wi Fi signal?
Totally. Upgrading your wireless card is one of those things that often gets overlooked, but it can make a huge difference, especially for older laptops that might be struggling to keep up with the latest Wi-Fi standards.
So, getting a newer wireless card essentially future proofs our laptop's ability to connect at the best possible speeds. What kind of speed differences are we talking about here?
You got it. Think going from barely being able to stream a video to smooth 4K playback, all from just upgrading that one component. The newest Wi-Fi standards offer significantly faster speeds and way better range compared to older ones.
Okay, I'm sold. What's involved in actually replacing a wireless card?
It's actually pretty similar to the other upgrades we've already talked about. Power down, unplug, and then locate that wireless card. It might be under the back panel or sometimes under the keyboard. It really just depends on your laptop.
Same principles apply then. Careful access and a gentle touch.
Absolutely. And that whole static discharge thing,
Yeah.
that's still super important here, so handle the card with care. You'll also need to disconnect the antennas before you remove the old card and then reconnect them to the new one.
Right, those little wires are crucial for actually transmitting and receiving those Wi Fi signals.
Exactly. Once that's done, just close everything back up, boot up your laptop, and get ready to enjoy some blazing fast Wi-Fi. Now, since we're talking about performance, let's shift gears a bit and talk security, biometrics specifically. Fingerprint scanners, facial recognition, all that cool stuff. It's becoming more and more common in laptops these days.
Yeah, it feels very futuristic. I have to admit, though, as much as I love the idea of having these high tech security features, I'm not entirely sure I understand how they actually work.
Sure, so let's start with fingerprint scanners. Usually they're built right into the power button or sometimes the touchpad. To get it set up, you'll usually need to install some drivers and software, either from a disk that came with your laptop or from the manufacturer's website.
Right, the drivers are like the translators between the hardware and the software.
Exactly. Once those drivers are installed, you can enroll your fingerprint. The software will take scans of your fingerprint from different angles to create this unique digital profile for you.
So when I go to unlock my laptop, it's comparing my fingerprint in real time to that stored profile.
Yep, precisely. It's kind of like matching your fingerprints to a criminal database, but
Hmm.
instead of catching a bad guy, you're granting yourself access.
I like it. So then, how does facial recognition work? Is it similar?
It's very similar, but instead of your fingerprint, it's using your unique facial features. Most laptops that have this feature have a built-in webcam with infrared capabilities, which means it can still see your face even in low-light conditions.
So even if I'm working late at night with the lights dimmed, it can still recognize me.
Exactly. When you're setting it up, the software will take a bunch of images of your face from different angles to build a detailed map of your facial features, which becomes your unique facial profile.
That's really cool. What are your thoughts on the security of these biometric logins? They seem super convenient, but are there any vulnerabilities we should be aware of?
That's a great question. While both fingerprint scanning and facial recognition add a really good layer of security, they're not completely foolproof. There have been cases where people have used some pretty sophisticated techniques to bypass these systems.
So it's probably best to think of them as an extra layer of security, not a complete replacement for good security practices overall.
Absolutely, don't rely on them entirely. Keep your laptop software up to date and use strong, unique passwords for all your accounts.
Solid advice. Okay, before we wrap things up, I have to ask. With all this talk about cutting edge laptop components and features, is there anything on the horizon that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, actually, you know what's been catching my eye lately? It's the growing use of near field communication, or NFC, in laptops.
NFC, right, yeah. Isn't that what we use for those contactless payments with our phones?
Exactly. It's all about that short range wireless communication between devices. And we're starting to see a lot more laptops incorporating NFC chips, which is really exciting because it opens up a lot of possibilities.
So we're talking beyond just like tapping to pay with our laptops then. What else could this lead to?
Think about like instantly transferring files between your laptop and your phone just by tapping them together. Or how about seamlessly pairing your wireless headphones or other peripherals without any hassle? Or even using it for logging into your laptop, which is a tap of your NFC-enabled phone.
Okay, that's super slick. No more emailing files to yourself or messing around with Bluetooth pairing. Sounds incredibly convenient. But what about the security aspect? How does NFC stack up against more traditional login methods?
NFC authentication can actually be even more secure than using passwords. When you're logging in with NFC, your laptop isn't looking for like a static password that someone could potentially steal. It's actually verifying this unique encrypted key that gets exchanged between your device and the laptop.
Ah, so it's like having this little digital vault on your phone that only your laptop can unlock.
You got it, which makes it way harder for someone to gain unauthorized access.
That's pretty reassuring. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of laptop hardware, I gotta say, I'm feeling super empowered. It's amazing what we can do with a little know how.
That's what we like to hear. It really is all about demystifying this tech and showing everyone that you don't need to be like a computer whiz to understand how it works or even to do some of these upgrades and repairs yourself.
Absolutely. For our listeners, the key takeaway here is that a lot of these laptop upgrades and fixes are totally doable for the average person. With a little bit of research, the right tools, and a healthy dose of curiosity, you can keep that trusty laptop of yours running smoothly for years to come.
And hey, who knows, you might even discover a hidden talent for tech tinkering along the way.
Exactly. A huge thank you to you, expert speaker, for sharing your incredible knowledge with us today. And to our amazing listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember that curiosity is the most powerful tool in your tech toolkit.